warrior song. Got my back to the sun when I rise, and the one chosen for the day crown. The warrior song with the little guns come when I wanna bust guns on the run. When I come with that warrior song. Got my back to the sun when I rise, and the one chosen for the day crown. The warrior song.
We're about to go, we're about to go, we're about to go, we're about to go, It's about to go break them like internet. Goofies run up, we leave them in the dead.
You say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GGN Roundtable, episode number 26. We have got a fire panel tonight. We got some awesome conversations that we're going to be having. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin seizures. We're going to be talking about Ethereum. We're going to be talking a little bit about China and their economy and the demand that they have going on right now. We're going to be doing a reaction vid. And last but not least, we are going to be touching on the Fed and how the Fed is progressing through this. Brendan, what would you say? It is a tumultuous time trying to get inflation under wraps. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think Fed Powell kind of alluded that to himself, to us in his speech. He's essentially still a little bit worried, clearly, about inflation. And I think that some of it could be because when you change the numbers and you change the underlying values of those numbers, then maybe he's really looking at it in a different way than he's saying out loud. And I still think there's some obviously inflationary pressures on our economy. It's clear. Now, what's surprising is that we're still having economic growth somehow with such incredibly high inflation. So something's unique from that situation.
For sure. Yeah, we are definitely going to be talking about that, as well as all the other stuff that I mentioned that we're going to be talking about. But before we get started, if you guys haven't done so already, if you're new to the channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Make sure you smash the like button also. Throw us a notification. That way, anytime we come out with new content, you guys are notified. And last but not least, guys, you'll see a QR code right there at the bottom of the screen. You're also going to see it in our description as well. Make sure you guys join our Telegram. Our Telegram is full of awesome content, 24 hours a day. We got Will, Jay, Zenith. We got Bean in there. I'm in there. We got a whole bunch of other influencers in there also. We keep the conversation rolling 24 hours a day. So whatever you guys do, make sure you guys are doing all that stuff. Please join the Telegram. It's free for now. It's not going to be free forever. So with that being said, I know, Brendan, you had just spoke a little bit. How's your week going? How was Disney? And what are you looking forward to, man?
Yeah, week was good. Busy, long weekend. I'm a little exhausted. It was a lot of fun. Spent some time at Disney this weekend with a few friends. Drank around the world at Epcot yesterday. And perfect weather, but it was a little glassy in the eyes after all those drinks. So, no, man, I'm really excited for the topics that we have tonight, and really interesting to give my thoughts on the Fed, Powell, and I think what effect that might have on the market in the short term.
For sure, man. I did drinking around the world at Epcot last year when I went last year, and trust me, it's a lot of fun, dude. So
yeah, then when you definitely went to Mexico with 3 shots of tequila.
Yep. I had to take a break in one of the Asian countries. I think I did a little rehydration, and then it was another one. It was after the Germany one. But either way, you can get super sauce doing that. So, but yeah, it's definitely a good time. Will, what's going on, man? How are things going in Texas? What you been up to?
I realized I had my headset and the thing muted. All right. Things are going great over in Texas, bro. I just did my first Hex Meetup Telegram get together with some folks up in Flower Mound up here in the north side of Dallas earlier yesterday, and that was absolutely awesome. Big shout out to Tam, Moondog, Togosh, and Hex Cells for showing up and having a great time. I probably drank a little bit more than I should have yesterday evening, but it was super awesome. Got to meet some really cool people. We got a lot of cool like Hex merch and Hex postcards and stuff that we can send out to all sorts of people all over the place and shill Hex out everywhere. If you guys aren't already in the Telegram, right down here is the link to the Telegram that will allow you guys to go and meet up with other Hexicans in all sorts of different parts of the world, not just Texas. So you can go to like you can do meetups in Australia, you can do meetups in the UK, you can do meetups in Alaska, you can do meetups wherever the hell you are. Just go and make a little chat thing. But I am doing great. I'm super pumped. I've had a fantastic weekend. Did some fight trading, did some shooting as well. So it's just been nothing but like going balls to the wall for me, man. So happy to be here, ready to wind it down and get some good info going. So hell
I
yeah,
like
bro.
it, man. Yeah, for sure. You know, we like to talk a lot on the channel about everyone just doing their part, right? Like we like to put out content. We like to make content. We got guys in the community that are super into technical analysis. We got guys that are into fundamental analysis and all that different sorts of stuff. But one of the cool features and one of the cool things to see is the absolute bond and cheerleaders that we have in the Hex community. And if I'm going to give a shout out, I'm going to give a shout out to Tam, because ever since that girl came onto our platform, she has been nothing but supportive. She has been a cheerleader for our channel and for the Hex ecosystem in general. So I'm super glad she found us, and her energy is absolutely awesome. And it's so cool that you got the opportunity to hang out with her and all that different sorts of stuff. So I would give you a minute to comment on that if you wanted to.
100%. No, Tam is just as enthusiastic in real life as she is in the comments and as she is in the Telegram. So big shout out to Tam. Thank you for coming yesterday. That was absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to meet you guys again.
Good stuff. Jay, what's going on, man? Mr. Great Value TA, how are things looking?
Hey, fellas, same shit, different day, right? Just waiting for Bitcoin here to make a move. Seems like we are still in a corrective phase of this current 60-day cycle, and I am expecting that we're probably still going to see lower prices, although not much lower than what we already experienced. Good week of sales here in Arizona. It was a lot of rain last week, but I was able to get everything done. I got a few customers that cleaned out my inventory yesterday, so always good news. And working on a few things. We are probably going to be doing a show here on Tuesday evening to talk about the State of the Union address that Illuvium, Kieran Warwick, and I believe he's the he's the one who's headed their marketing department. Eric or Andrew Wall, I believe his name is, and they basically spoke about the roadmap for Illuvium 2024. They addressed some of the questions that people have been asking about Palworld, and basically just addressing a lot of the concerns that the player base, the ones who have been not just playtesting Overworld, but have been playtesting Illuvium 0 and Illuvium Arena, they address a lot of those concerns. And from an investor standpoint, I'm not really a gamer so much anymore, but from an investor standpoint, seeing them address all of those different key issues really gave me a lot of peace of mind, because a lot of the questions that they brought up there were some of the glaring red flags that I had in my brain as an investor and as somebody who used to game a lot, especially the type of game that Illuvium is. So. Hey, that's what I've been working on. But other than that, man, like I said, same shit, different dates. Been good over here in Arizona. Zenith, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. Just same stuff, different day over here. Actually got a little shooting done today as well. So I'm in the camp with Will Stevenson there. I just joined a gun range, so I had to go do the orientation stuff. And the whole time it was just kind of itching. I was like, all right, yeah, on with it. Let's get out of here and start sending some lead down range. So that's what I've been up to. I've been researching all the same crypto stuff you guys have been doing. But yes, like Jay said, we're kind of just watching Bitcoin right now and just poking it with a stick saying, come on, do something. Come on. But yeah, that's what I got going on. Nothing too crazy.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, Jay, I didn't get the chance to ask you back in the green room. Did you have some TA that you wanted to do for us?
Yeah, sure, man. If you guys want to,
Okay.
I'm always happy to do a little bit of TA before we get things started here. So
Yeah. So here's what we'll do. We're gonna do some chat shout outs real quick, and then I'm gonna kick it over to you. If you could just keep it at like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, just like a brief overview, and then we can hop into the stories. Only because we got like 5 articles to get through tonight, and I definitely we're gonna be having some good conversation on there. So I want to make sure we're able to hit on all 5. So.
Are you suggesting that Jay can talk about TA for hours on end? What?
Jay can talk about TA for hours on end for sure. Jay can also keep it extremely abbreviated, and he does a fantastic job at that.
You can do that. I can give you the sauce.
And he provides great value.
Correct. 100%.
Thank you for the shout out there, Bean.
All right. Hey, let's do some quick community shout outs real quick. We got Megan Mulcair in the house. She's watching us from work. Good to see you, Megan. We appreciate you hopping on. We got Brother 64 in the house. It's great to see you too, man. Looking forward to having you on stream. We're going to have Brother 64 on a Whiskey Wednesday episode just to catch up with him. I believe it's February 21st. I believe that's what him and I talked about. So can't wait to catch up with you there, man. We got Tam in the house. We were just singing you some praises, Tam. So good to see you in the chat. We appreciate all the support and all that behind us. We got Brown in the house also. We got Gains by Casey. What is going on, my man? And last but not least, we got Hexagon lost in Asia a few minutes late. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. You are here before the topics are starting to get covered. So welcome. Again, guys, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you sub to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell, join the Telegram. Keep the chat on fire. You guys are doing great so far. Loving the conversations. All right, Jay, go ahead and take it away, buddy.
Hey, I love that Josh asked for a consolidated TA when we're on like a corrective pattern in Bitcoin, and that's usually like the most complicated part of the technical analysis. He's like, please keep it short and sweet. But
I like to make you stretch your mind to say, okay, I need to be able to get a lot of complex stuff into a really abbreviated time, man. It's all about making each other better. That's all.
It's testing time.
From my best, man. All right. Let me know if you guys can see my screen over here.
Yeah, man. Good to go.
Fantastic. Okay. So we are currently day number 13 of our 60-day cycle. High here on day number 7. And like I mentioned earlier, we are still in this very, very corrective phase of Bitcoin, as Zenith alluded to earlier, where people are just basically poking Bitcoin with a stick, asking it to do something, right? Because nobody likes it when Bitcoin is just kind of ranging and consolidating around this price like it has been doing for the past few weeks. I think people get a lot bigger kick out of the market when they see a big drop like this, as opposed to this sideways action that we have been kind of experiencing over the past week here for Bitcoin. So like I said, still a corrective phase. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 finishing up here in Bitcoin. And now we are in this, what it looks like to me, at least personally from the analysis that I have done, we are in, it looks to be like a classic zigzag corrective pattern, right? And the reason why I say that is because if you look at the structure of this initial downwards movement, all right, we're not going to be able to see this here on the daily chart because it's a bit too big of a time frame. But if we zoom in into the degenerate time frames, here's your 4-hour, right? You can see here that we have a 1, 2, 3, right? Complicated 4, and this very extended 5. And a zigzag makes sense because zigzags start off with that 5-wave structure to the downside, right? It also makes sense because what we know is that on a macro perspective, once we zoom out here, right, that initial 5-wave sequence to the upside to start our macro wave 3, right, is the wave 1, right? That's the wave 1 of 3. So we are now in a consolidating wave 2 structure, right? And zigzags often have a habit of appearing, you guessed it, in the wave 2s of a 5-wave impulse, right? So that in combination with this initial structure to the downside here leads me to believe that we are in a zigzag corrective pattern, right? So we have your A wave here currently completed. Let me go ahead and do some, put some lines up here for you guys. So we have an A, right? Oh, that's not it. Where is it? Where is it? Is that it? Nope. Here we go. We have an A currently completed. We have a B yet to come in. And then the C yet to be determined, right? And so now we are in the B leg of our corrective pattern. And the subwave count for zigzag is a 5, which we've already completed, and then a 3 for the B wave, and then another 5-wave structure down for your C wave. Now, here's the thing. If you analyze this, once again, on the smaller time frames, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So because this is a 5-wave structure to the upside, this cannot be the completion of this B wave. This means that this is likely, right, also probably a zigzag within this corrective leg, right? So we have a 5-wave structure, a 3, and a potentially another 5-wave structure to the upside to complete that B wave before heading back down to C, right? This is why I mentioned, I believe earlier this week when we were on that Telegram call with Dace, that over the next few weeks, watch out for a potential swing trade if you are a risky type of person who likes to swing trades or just trade corrections, that look for a potential profit-taking opportunity once this B wave terminates, because then we're going to most likely head back down to the downside, right? And so what can we expect for this completion to the upside right here for this B wave, right? So if we do a fib retracement from our swing high to our swing low, you can expect, oh, look at that, that's perfect. You can expect this B wave to lose steam. I'm thinking actually around this $46,800 area, right? Because if you try and overlap this with a fib extension, right? Let's assume that this A of the B wave is done. Right. Oh, what the heck happened to my fib extension there? Give me a second. There we go. Bring back my fib extension. 1, 2. What? There we go. Keep losing it. 1, 2, 3. You notice that 1-to-1 extension also terminates around that $47,000 area, right? So, and look at this. You have some horizontal resistance lining up at the very top of these candles. And so if you guys follow Elliott wave analysis, you know that this zigzag corrective pattern has a tendency to be a 1-to-1 extension. Like the C leg of your zigzag tends to be a 1-to-1 correction of your A wave here, right? And so that 1-to-1 corrective pattern terminates around this $47,000 area in Bitcoin, which is a confluence with the top of these candles over here and this 0.786 area pulled from our swing high to our swing low, right? So I'm expecting if we get more movement to the upside, right, waiting for this B wave to terminate, that $47,000 area is going to be your resistance before heading back down to complete the macro corrective pattern, right? Now, let me get all this out of here because I know this could send some people into seizures. If for some reason that this corrective structure here is your wave 2, right? Unlikely, but if it is, what you're going to, like, how am I going, like, basically what's going to invalidate my corrective thesis, right? If this move to the upside shows no weakness and just makes a parabolic move up this way, right? Let's was this my drawing tool, right? If this move to the upside just becomes parabolic and it doesn't show any weakness to the downside, right? Like, for example, it doesn't break down below like the 10-day moving average, or it doesn't even touch the 20-day moving average. If that move becomes that parabolic, right, that is going to be that's going to indicate to me that this correction right down here could be potentially your wave 2, and that we are heading into continuation for that larger uptrend, right? And so what is going to make that scenario more likely? Well, the easiest thing to look out for is if price cracks that $47,000 area, and more importantly, and keeps heading to the upside and cracks our cycle high here from our last 60-day cycle of, what's the exact number there? Let me zoom in right here. What's that wick? And we break the high of 49,048. That's going to indicate to me that either one, Bitcoin wants to continue the trend to the upside, or we are in a completely different corrective pattern, right? But the former is more likely, that Bitcoin wants to keep continuing the trend to the upside, and we're going to head into our wave 3 of that macro wave 3, right? So downside targets, look for resistance around 47K before heading back down, which actually makes sense because if we head up to that area, it's going to put us somewhere within before day 30, right? So I know a lot of people are thinking, Zenith included, right, that we might potentially have a left translated cycle for Bitcoin for this particular cycle. So that like hitting resistance around $47,000 area before hitting back down will actually place us somewhere in between day 13 where we are now and day 30. And to the upside, look for Bitcoin to have an aggressive parabolic move to the upside. Not really a lot of, like, for example, here, right? You see how there's not really a lot of weakness here in this move to the upside, not really a lot of downwards price movement. It's using this trend line of support. Same thing here, using this trend line of support. If we keep moving up, right, and that move is so aggressive and you don't have a lot of weakness going to the downside, and we crack this cycle high of $49,000 Bitcoin, then it is very likely that price is just going to keep heading up, which means that we're probably in our wave 3 of that macro wave 3. So I know that was a little bit longer than 10 minutes. Hopefully it didn't do too bad there, though.
Yeah, man. No, that was awesome. Zenith, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Not especially. Jay pretty much killed it on that. The only thing I would add is that on my charts, I just pay a little more attention to the daily moving averages. We bounced off the 50 daily moving average and we're starting to head back down below. And also the 20 daily moving average is also below the 50 right now. So the 50 is the highest, then the 20, and then that crossover of those averages is sometimes what people look for a major event to occur. And in this case, that was pretty much right where we saw the cycle low.
Yeah. Either way, you should be happy, right? If you have capital sitting on the side, if we head back down, right, around $37,000 is probably a lot. Like my lowest estimates, around 37K. You should be happy if you have capital sitting on the side because you get the DCA into lower prices. If we just keep heading upwards, right, if that bullish scenario plays out, you should also be happy because, I mean, hey, price go up, number go up. So
boring times are not bad times by any stretch of the imagination. What that really does is it gives you an extra second to breathe and really think about your strategy and take a second look at all the inputs you got going on. Understandably, it's not like we're sitting back at like $17,000 again. So it's not like that, which was a great time to just sit there and do nothing because then you have more paychecks to just throw into it. But at the same time, if we're cooling off, that's not bad. We'll heat up real soon. Don't worry. And when we do, good chance is it's not going to slow down.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? February is generally a green month, right? And with all the news that we've had, with the potential of pushing back rate cuts, we could continue that trend potentially.
Good stuff. Good conversation. Hey, let's go ahead and touch the chats one more time, and then we'll get into the first article. So we got Tam Tam in the house again. She's got the best feeling for us. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Shout out Tam Tam. We got Sloth in the house. What's going on, Sloth? Good to see you, my man, as always. Hexagon loss in Asia. No cap. This chart looks bullish 100%. I completely agree. We got Alan in the house. I'm glad I made it to the WoW conference. And then last but not least, we got moon-pilled Rational Optics, who was our first ban live on stream. But then we unbanned him, and now he's back. So, yeah, Jay, you missed
why
it.
did we ban him?
Yeah. So there was an accidental click behind the scenes, but all is good. He's back, and yeah, one of our original OGs in the community. Definitely always glad to see him in here. We apologize for the misclick. So let's go and get into the first article, gentlemen. How's that sound?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the first article is coming from CoinDesk. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin seizure. All right. So police in Germany have provisionally seized 50,000 Bitcoin worth $2.17 billion, calling the action its largest cryptocurrency seizure ever, according to a police statement. The claim is related to an operation of a privacy website in 2013 that violated the Copyright Act. Proceeds of the venture then went to converting into Bitcoin. One of the two suspects voluntarily transferred the Bitcoin to the Federal Criminal Police Office. An investigation is ongoing into subsequent commercial money laundering. Although no official charges have been lodged against the men, a final decision has yet to be made about the utilization of the Bitcoins, the police statement said. Zenith, I want to kick it over to you. What are your initial thoughts on this article?
Sure thing. This one is interesting. I don't want to be the first one. I wasn't looking forward to being the first one to go because I got a little bit of a tin hat theory, so to speak, on this. So if you read the article, you'll see that they seized 50,000 Bitcoin for a site that was operating in 2013. So just as a matter of point, I went and I looked at the Bitcoin prices from 2013. Didn't specify a date, so I gave you a range here. On the 1st of January 2013, Bitcoin was trading for $13.31. Hurts to see, I know. Too bad we don't have a time machine. Anyways, they had a high that year in November 29th at $1,132. And then at the end of the year, it came back down to $764.27. I know, just super hard crash. Hate to see it. Those people really must be suffering. Hopefully they just held on to it. Now they're quadrillionaires. So 50,000 Bitcoin times $13 is $650,000. 50,000 Bitcoin times $1,132 is $56.6 million. And if we go back over to our article, they talked about how they now have seized $2.17 billion with a B dollars in this case. Now, I'm not an expert in German law enforcement. However, is there a possibility that there is an incentive to look at older crimes involving Bitcoin because the price of the underlying asset that could be seized has gone up?
Of course.
I would argue yes. At the same time, though, we got to ask ourselves, what happens to seized Bitcoin? Well, eventually the governments dump it back onto the market to recoup some funds to fund the government. This is what's happened in the Silk Road case, and I imagine it's going to happen when it's something similar here. Now, is this a little tinfoil hat-ish? Yeah, a bit, but at the same time, it took you 11 years to seize Bitcoin. I'm surprised that the Bitcoin was still even in those wallets based on those people. And then I guess this is just a small note for people that wonder, how is this even possible? Because that question should come up. Because one of the things that we talk about is that unless you give someone your seed phrases or they somehow magically hack the entire blockchain network, no one can really steal your Bitcoin. Yeah, Will is entirely correct there. In cybersecurity, if you read the securing wallets that we talked to the author Steven on, he says that one of the most famous cybersecurity attacks is called the hammer attack, where someone finds you in real life and threatens you with a hammer. And unless you give them your keys or your seed phrase, they can't pry it from you. So it has to be willfully given. One of the things that they can do in law enforcement exercises say, hey, if you cooperate with us and actually give us these assets, then it will be taken into account during your trialing and sentencing as basically either being cooperative or uncooperative. So that's where that is.
I would just like to say that I think they said in the article that it was voluntarily released, and
that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Define voluntary.
Yes, one of the two suspects voluntarily transferred the Bitcoin to the Federal Criminal Police Office. I don't think it was voluntary. Jay, were you the one that was saying earlier that there's a large incentive now for government to go after crimes that used to have Bitcoin and all that good stuffs?
I mean, that was me. That was
Zenith.
That was
my bad.
Uncle Z telling you that the government's coming after your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't. So I'm with you on that conspiracy. That's all.
Zenith, you bring up a good point, because at some point you have to listen. I understand. Okay, money laundering happens, right? But most of the time when people think about money laundering, they're talking about money laundering in either US dollars or whatever the native dollars are. All right. Something that isn't really going to fluctuate in value that much. And now this conversation centered around Bitcoin that has astronomical fluctuations. It really does sort of bring up the question, do you need to sort of implement a statute of limitations on the seizure of cryptocurrency? At least to the point to where, the money laundering that occurred in 2013 was hundreds of thousands of dollars, not billions of dollars. So it does bring up the really good question is, as we move forward and as Bitcoin becomes more and more adopted, I mean, we have entire countries right now that are naming Bitcoin as, their currency, or at least trending in that direction. So is there going to be a statute of limitations? Does that need to be the case to where it's like, okay, the crime happened here, this is what the value of it was, as opposed to 11 years later? You know what I'm saying? Because if something happens right now, what's Bitcoin going to be worth 11 years from now? If Bitcoin's $1 million and there's 50,000 then, I mean, you're talking GDPs of countries at that point that are being seized. So it really does bring up a good question.
You're not wrong. The question, this is always an age-old tale of technology and legal questions, which is that technology will always advance faster than legal or governmental regulations can. And that's something that has to be figured out. As far as statute of limitations go, honestly, everything pertaining to the existing statutes of limitations should apply, because theoretically, if they can seize Bitcoin from, as the argument goes, if you can seize Bitcoin from 11 years ago involved in the crime, then theoretically, if that cash was still there, you should be able to do the same. So as long as it's one for one, you should be fine. But this is an interesting concept, and it's actually something that is covered in The Sovereign Individual. This is a book that is highly recommended by Charlie of Cultivate Crypto. And this is a very dense book, I will warn you. However, this is a very good read, and it's kind of like one of those like 1000 IQ galaxy brain moments. There's only one chapter in here really that is the key point for cryptocurrency or the turning to a modern age, and that's chapter 8. But this book was written back in the 90s, and this is when a guy who had never even heard of the internet but started thinking about computers thought about how you can send money to people without having governments involved, and how you have store of value on something other than physical property. One of the key points that the guy brings up in this chapter is that there theoretically could be a point where you stop, where the power of the individual due to decentralization grows so large that they're actually on the scale that they're starting to compete and rival governments or nation states. And you can even start to see some of this stuff, because when I was reading this book for the first time, I was listening to it actually, and at the same time, this was earlier in 2023 when people on Twitter were calling Elon Musk a traitor for not giving the U.S. government access to his satellite internet service over Ukraine for their purposes, which was the literal government and people trying to support the government to convince that an individual not acting in their own self-interest is being a traitor to the nation state.
They also called him a traitor for not giving the federal government access to Donald Trump's Twitter account.
Correct. These are ideas that are explored in this book, which is a good read I'd recommend. And it's something to think about, because the world we're living in now is starting to move very, very heavily towards decentralization. And we're starting to see that phase where nation states and governments are actually trying to fight back and see if they can still wrangle hold on the world at large and all the mechanisms that they've previously controlled. So when we bring up a news article like this, is like, yeah, this could just be a flash in the pan topic. You're like, oh, okay, some bad guys on the internet did some bad stuff a long time ago. But this is going to be something more and more relevant because the incentive structure is there and is lining up to look like it might be a little fishy, might be a little shady. And at the same time, it just plants that seed of doubt that's enough to get people to start thinking and start asking these questions. So also, fun fact, I looked this up really quick while Josh was about to ask me this question. In 2022, they estimated that $20.6 billion worth of illicit transaction volume was used during cryptocurrency. Fun fact, this is like 3% of all crime. It's the number one most used asset for criminal activity is the US dollar, preferably the $100 bill. It's not even close. So the whole narrative that cryptocurrency is illegal activity and that's primarily what it's used for is honestly just a moot point at this time, because it's like the US government actually is the creator of the most useful asset for illegal activity, which is just cold hard cash.
Well, I disagree with you, Zenith. I don't think this is just a flash in the pan thing. When I read this article, I was like, wow, $50 billion worth of Bitcoin used for money laundering. You know what? What I did, I got on my phone, right? I went to my email and I personally wrote Jamie Dimon a letter telling him he was right. He was absolutely right. Bitcoin is only used for illicit criminal activities and money laundering, and that the government should shut it down. I said, I'm sorry for doubting you. I said, please, Mr. Diamond, go back in front of Congress. Please speak with your best friend. You know, I know you're best friends with Elizabeth Warren, and tell her she was also right. That Bitcoin's only use case is for criminals. Like, this story was the last straw. It was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, right? I can no longer be associated with the space. In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back. So now not only has Bitcoin contributed to illicit criminal activity, I am also now going to call PETA, because now they're engaged with abusing animals. So yeah, I can no longer be associated actually with the Degen Roundtable. I'm sorry, guys. I'm out. Bye bye.
I know a
There he
camel
goes.
trader who might be able to bribe you into purchasing a new camel, something like that. I don't know if Fast Abdul is in the chats right now, but he might be able to sell you a camel.
Oh, he's
Something
in
like
there. I
that.
saw him earlier.
Hell
Not
yeah!
to
Shout
get-
out to Fast Abdul.
Not to get too philosophical with this, but there's a good saying by a wise man who took part in founding a country, Benjamin Franklin, I think it was, which is that it might have been Jefferson, but it's the idea that if men were either pure angels or pure devils, government would not work or be needed, because we either would be so good that we don't need government, or that we're so bad that it wouldn't work anyways. So looking at a story like this, it's entirely possible to think that you're black-pilled and be like, yeah, governments are dead. How do I just follow Elon Musk as a nation state? And it's like, no. We're not saying that. There are interesting activities. It is possible that priorities are shifting around based on who you are and what you're doing. And I'll say this much. If you are just the guy in charge of the forensic crimes department in Germany and you're pining for a promotion, what looks good? Continuing to do the status quo, or finding a way to rake in $2.4 billion for your department? It's just personal incentives.
It's really funny because you see this in financial crimes, but it's almost like, you know how a lot of people, it might be decades after, right? Like somebody who's not famous and they become super famous, and then suddenly you have a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork trying to get money from them, accusing them of X, Y, and Z. It's kind of like this with Bitcoin, right? Nobody really gave a shit when Bitcoin was worth pennies on a dollar, but now that it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, people seem to fucking care now, right?
Yeah, 100%. I got a thought experiment that I want to pose real quick, not only to you guys but to the live audience right now. I'm gonna mention 5 different price points, okay? And the thought experiment that I want to see is, which one of these do you like understand? Which one hits harder to you? Which one do you more so understand with? So if you were to read a news article that said $42,000 US dollars were seized, or 1 Bitcoin were seized, which one of those would slap a little bit harder? I don't need you guys to answer. And as I go down the list, I think you guys will sort of understand where I'm going with this. So for a majority of our audience, right, they're going to understand $42,000 equals, I'm using round numbers, so to speak. So let's say Bitcoin's $42,000 right now. All right, we're both going to be able to understand, and it's going to be able to hit on both accounts. But now what happens when you start introducing other currencies into the mix, currencies that you aren't necessarily familiar with? What hits harder? 38,000 euros were seized, or 1 Bitcoin was seized? How about 719,000 pesos were seized, or 1 Bitcoin was seized? How about 6.2 million yen were seized versus 1 Bitcoin was seized? And the last but not least, how about 55 million dinar were seized versus 1 Bitcoin were seized? As we get farther and farther out into currencies that we don't really understand, it doesn't really hit home as much. But what do we all understand? We all understand Bitcoin. And in a lot of ways, I think Bitcoin is really becoming a global unifier in an expedient manner. And I'll put it like this. Okay, so the Bretton Woods Agreement was signed in July of 1944. You guys know I'm a history buff, so I'm going to take a little walk down history road real quick. All right, it didn't become fully functional until 1958, but the seeds were sown in 1944. And what do we have right after that's signed and the war comes to a close? World War II comes to a close. We had peace, we had prosperity, we had rebirth. All right, Europe starts to improve itself. Japan becomes, a powerhouse. We see a global peace in most aspects. Of course, we have regional stuff going on. We had the fight against communism going on in the 50s and the Korean War. Then we have Vietnam coming. Yeah, I'll get to that here in a second. But either way, it was stamped with approval for all the world governments that the US dollar was going to be the global reserve currency. it was understood. That's what the case was. And then we started moving forward, and then we had the peace and the prosperity. We'll skip until 1971 when Nixon takes us off the gold standard. All right. And then 2 years later, the Bretton Woods Agreement completely collapses. Now, we still have certain parts of the Bretton Woods Agreement in place right now. We're still the global reserve currency. But since the 1970s, we've seen a dramatic rise in foreign currency. We've seen hyperinflation going through the roof. We've seen all this stuff happen. And I think for the first time since the Bretton Woods Agreement, we're seeing another currency that can be understood throughout the entire world. And it poses questions to me. And you guys, if you guys want to think about it, if you guys want to answer it, you can. But we're all about decentralization. That's what we're all about. But the question that I have is, knowing that case, is can you take a large centralized idea and then completely decentralize it in the details of how it's played out? That's the question that I pose to you guys. If you want to talk about it, you can. If not, but those are the thoughts that I had on the article. And yeah, Will, you're coming off of mute. I'm interested to know what you have to say.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I want to make sure I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you take a large centralized idea, a 30,000 foot centralized idea, but the details be fully decentralized in the implementation of that large idea? Is that possible?
I'm not sure. Are you talking about
Josh? Can you give Will the context of what is the large centralized idea?
Yeah, sure.
Like central bank
so,
currency?
So the large centralized idea could be Bitcoin is going to become a global unifier in currency across the world. Okay. Does that implementation of that possibility, does that mean that the details are then centralized also, or can the implementation of that be completely decentralized?
I think it's certainly possible, as long as like when when all the countries had an agreement, right, about making the dollar the standard, right, because it was still on the gold standard. And you had enough countries come on board and agree to it. I think if enough countries came on board and agreed to using Bitcoin and use that as our standard currency, I think it's certainly possible. I think you can leave it to each individual entity how they want to use Bitcoin, right? Like you said, the details, the nuances can be left to those individual entities. But as long as everybody agrees that, hey, guys, it seems like the dollar is going to the wayside, even though I think that's unlikely. If all the countries agreed to use Bitcoin as the new gold standard, then yes, I think it's certainly possible, right? It's kind of like sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is it's sort of like, take the Federal Reserve, for example. We're going to be talking about them later in the episode, okay? Maybe Brendan can pitch in here because I know that he's, super in touch with that sort of thing. The rise of the Federal Reserve has led to a whole lot of headaches, and it's led to a drastic difference in wealth. The wealth gap between the haves and the have-nots has expanded. As the Fed has grown in power, we've seen nothing but more and more issues. So the question is, if we were able to go back in time to 1944, or if, let's say, in 2025, the world decided Bitcoin is going to be the global reserve currency, or whenever that can happen. We know that once governments start meddling in the issue, that's when it becomes more centralized, and that's when the issues start happening. Is there a way that things can be implemented in a decentralized manner while still having that centralized idea of a global reserve currency? I guess. And I want to give Brendan the opportunity to speak real quick.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to get to your question. The first thing is the Fed. The Fed has, in many people's opinion, become too big for its own good, too big for us. We're supposed to be in a democracy, right? The Fed has control over our essentially entire economic outlook. Who's elected on the Fed? Is anybody elected? No, right? And so there's a really big thought process, not kind of on both sides of the aisle. I've seen articles from PBS to Newsweek to whoever, talking about this, where it's like, the people are supposed to have the power with votes. And so how does the Fed have so much power when none of those people are actually, elected? They're just appointed. And is that fair? So anytime that the Fed is going to be involved, it's never going to be decentralized. We know that. But we also know there are a bunch of countries that want to come off of the United States dollar for essentially finishing transactions. Russia's going to do it this year, I'm sure. China, India, there's a few others that have talked about it as well, right? So I think that it might make sense to go to a currency where everyone is sort of on the same level playing field, so to speak. But the United States has a lot of power and they have a large military. So who knows if that will ever happen.
Just to kind of finish my point off on this, I do think it is certainly possible. I think of the United States in that sense, right? Because we have a big federal government, right? It's a central government that handles all the big ticket issues. But at its core, right, each of our 50 states, right, they're basically sovereign individuals, right? They're like federalists in that nature, where each and every single state can kind of, take care of how they want to handle their own state taxes, or how they want to implement some of these law. We had the big issue with abortion a few months back, right? Like each state is able to now that rule has been deferred back to the states, as opposed to before it was like the central government who was kind of putting the ban hammer on that law. So I think, yes, when it comes to these kinds of ideas, I think it is certainly possible to have one central entity, and then you leave it to each individual entity down the line to handle it however they want to handle it, right? So I think of the United States in that nature, where you have a central federal government, and then each individual state is a separate entity within the spirit of federalism and stuff like that.
Tinfoil hat guy here, trying to tell you that not everything is a giant cabal or conspiracy, or there could even be a central point of centralization. If you want to talk about the use of Bitcoin or something like this that is truly decentralized at its principal core, then yes, it's very possible that it could become the world reserve currency. But I think it's much more likely to become the world reserve currency out of just happenstance, or just playing to people's advantages and whatnot, which is that someone somewhere is going to realize, oh shoot, our fiat currency has hyperinflated. Everything is worth 99% more than it used to be, and our value has never been lower. So let's switch to Bitcoin. And then they're also going to find a neighbor who did a similar thing. And then people inside of those countries are going to be like, I should start doing more business with that country, because exchanging money with them for these products is super easy and not hard, because we both use Bitcoin as a central currency. And then more and more people are going to have this realization. And as long as you have these free markets and these abilities for people to optimize their life and optimize their choices, that's how you could theoretically get that, what's the word I'm looking for? The doctor's 9 out of 10, the consensus. You get the consensus that everyone is like, okay, this is the best way to transact right now until something else better comes out. We don't need anyone cramming this down our throats. And for the most part, this has been working, so let's make it work more.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Let's go ahead and transition. Before we transition, we're going to do another round of chat shout outs, and then we're going to give you guys a little bit of hopium when it comes to Ethereum. So, but let's go ahead and shout out the chat. We got Crypto Bigfoot in the house sending us some eyeballs. Right.
Googly eyes.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, some Google eyes. We got No Money Mike, 12 minutes behind, but he's catching up. No rush, my man. Make sure you're taking in all the contact. We got Jonathan in the house. What's up, man? Yo. We got Hex Addict here also. Good to see you, my man. And we got Paul in the house. The state sees Bitcoin crimes on the level of murder. If they aren't going to put a statute of limitations, give everyone perspective. Loose lips sinks ships. All righty. Keep the chat going, guys. You guys are on fire. It's absolutely impossible for me to keep up and host the show at the same time. So shout out to Miss Cassie behind the scenes. You're doing an awesome job. As always, we appreciate it big time. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Ethereum article coming out of CoinDesk. And then, Jay, I want to kick it over to you for first thoughts on this after I introduce the article. So Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency by market value, could rise nearly 70% from current levels and hit $4,000 by May, as applications for spot-based exchange-traded funds will likely win regulatory approval in the United States. Standard Chartered Bank said in the report on Tuesday. Led by research head Jeff Kendrick, the analysis expect the United States SEC, as it did with Bitcoin, will delay decisions on the spot ETF applications until eventually giving the green light for the first final deadline. This puts May 23rd as provisional day for the approval, the day of final deadlines for applications by asset managers VanEck and ARC21 shares. The market currently underestimates the odds of an approval, according to the report, but the bank sees no fundamental reason for the SEC to treat Ethereum different than Bitcoin. It highlighted that ETH features are also listed on the regulated Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and the SEC did not include Ethereum among the 67 cryptocurrencies the agency claims to be securities during its legal fight with Ripple. And then last but not least, Kendrick said in a quote, heading into the expected approval date of May 23rd, we expect Ethereum prices to track or outperform Bitcoin during the comparable period. Jay, what do you have, my friend? Actually, hang on real quick. We got a super chat here from Alan, $10. We appreciate that super chat, man. Government spending is the main issue, regardless of currency, unless the consensus for crypto exists by the majority. This will continue. Inflation is hidden taxation. 100%, man. We appreciate the super chat, guys. You got any comments on that? That little information right there?
I think you're going to find agreement across all of us here. Government spending is an issue, but good luck trying to.
This is a topic.
Even Powell says it. Even Federal
This
Chair
topic has a
Powell says
whole
it.
show. This is an entire show on its own right here, which is
Good
not
luck
just
getting-
do we spend too much, but also
Yeah.
the metagame behind good luck ever trying to change spending. Because if you
Good
ask
luck.
people, they're like, does the government spend too much money? They're going to go, yes. And then you ask, okay, cool. What are we going to cut funding from? They go, none of my stuff.
Everything.
Which is why
100%
it's
money.
up to you, the sovereign individual, to get your finances in order. Because if you try and wait for the government to get their shit in order, you don't hold your breath. You're gonna pass out and probably die. But yes, Alan, agreed. Overspending always an issue.
Yep. And Jay, stay off mute there and give us your insight. Can Ethereum?
I'm going to jump in real quick before we get off this too much. I just got to say, like, this is a massive topic. Remember, no one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. Also, I never knew how much of a shithole Twitter was until I went on the trending tab the other day and people were talking about Social Security. My God, have I never seen worse hot takes in my life. People talking about Social Security and how they're entitled to it and how it's never going away and how it's perfect. And I'm like, okay, I understand why people talk about this as a bathroom wall.
Twitter elicits the worst in people, right? Dr. Peterson spoke about it, right? And I think it makes a lot of sense because he spoke about the short form nature of Twitter, right? And how because people are only limited to like a few characters, that they want to put down the most overly sensational comments that they could possibly put down because of that short form comment. So it's like that's why Twitter is usually a cesspool. So But yeah. So as far as the Ethereum article is concerned, one point of contention, I don't think Ethereum hits a new all-time high before Bitcoin. I certainly think that it is possible for Ethereum to be outpacing Bitcoin. That is reflected on the ETH versus Bitcoin chart. It seems like it has bottomed out and Ethereum has been slowly gaining over Bitcoin. Whether that continues is yet to be determined. But if the Ethereum ETFs do get approved, yes, certainly likely that we see a period of time where the Ethereum is going to severely outpace its Bitcoin pair. So that's number one. Number two, so I know that the article was speaking about how it doesn't believe that the SEC has any reason whatsoever to deny the Ethereum ETF because one, the most obvious thing probably that they pointed out was it wasn't listed in that very long list of tokens and coins that the SEC said were actually securities. However, the SEC, Gary Gensler, has, even though they don't like to say it, they don't like to mention it because they don't like to give Bitcoin its dues. We've known that Bitcoin is not a security for the longest time. How did that stop the SEC from delaying and rejecting and delaying and pushing that further down along the line? It certainly did not. Now, what has me hopeful for this particular ETF, right? Ethereum. Well, you got BlackRock now in the mix. We've been talking about how Larry Fink, when he does his press tours, He's not just talking about his ETF, but he's also talking up his book with the Ethereum ETF. So if we were to take into consideration BlackRock's track record with getting stuff approved, they have one L, and everything else has been a yes to them. And so is it highly probable that they get approved around that May time period, right? Yes, right, because we have Van Eck and we have Kathy Woods, right? ARC shares. They are the ones who have the first final deadline. But like we saw with the Bitcoin ETFs, it's a strong possibility that they just approve everything at once. I do like the fact that Josh didn't gloss over this, but there was a portion at the very end of the article that they don't think that Ethereum will see the kind of outflows from the ETF like Bitcoin is seeing, because the amount held by entities like Grayscale, like the FTX estate, is nowhere near the amount that they hold in the Bitcoin. So yeah, if the Ethereum ETFs do get approved, watch out, because you're gonna see that Ethereum to Bitcoin chart like severely outpace Bitcoin in terms of its ETH pair. So that is my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on the article.
Yeah, and you really got to think about the bullish case for Ethereum here. Bitcoin is one thing, but we're talking about Ethereum now. And I did leave that portion out of the article because I was going to bring it up in my own sort of monologue. But that's super important. So number one is this is the first cycle that we've had deflationary Ethereum. Okay, so that in and of itself right there is super bullish. Number two is Ethereum is still obtainable for retail investors. Not saying Bitcoin isn't. Bitcoin is, but Bitcoin is probably a cycle away from becoming an investor-only sort of cryptocurrency to be able to get into. So Ethereum is still obtainable, and it's still very reasonably priced. It doesn't take a lot, and those that like to purchase crypto in large and in round numbers, they can do so easily with Ethereum. Another thing is Ethereum, it has more efficient updates. All right. There's more efficient updates coming to Ethereum. They've already been made, and that will continue to be made. So that's bullish in and of itself. The FTX bankruptcy only has 0.05% of Ethereum in its holdings. All right. So the entire bankruptcy amount was $3.4 billion. Of that $3.4 billion, the majority was in Solana. Second place was Bitcoin. Third place was Ethereum. So with $3.4 billion bankruptcy, Ethereum totals made up $192 million. All right. So it's 0.05%. So just like Jay had just mentioned, the sales of Ethereum aren't going to be nearly as much as we saw with the selling off of the FTX information. And then last but not least is this cycle is Ethereum's third cycle. This is the maturation blue chip confirmation cycle. All right. The first cycle that it went through was the new kid on the block. The second cycle that it went through, it was like, hey, I'm the real deal. I can be a big time player in this game. And then this is the confirmation cycle. This is the, hey, listen up, I'm a fucking blue chip. That's where I am right now. And that's exactly where Ethereum is. So the bullish case for Ethereum to outperform Bitcoin once these ETFs come out, I think is very strong. And I think we're not going to see nearly as many headwinds as we saw. I still think it could slightly be a buy the rumor, sell the news event, but I still think that the influx of Ethereum purchases is going to vastly outweigh the selling, opposite to what happened at Bitcoin. But y'all's thoughts?
All very good points. As regards to buy the rumors, sell the news sort of stuff, I think one of the main differences you're going to see if Ethereum does get this ETF is that the build-up to this one has been much, much less than the Bitcoin one. Try to think back when we first started talking about the Bitcoin ETF. It was almost over a year ago, I'd argue. Our channel hasn't even been around longer than we've been talking about an ETF potentially. And the Ethereum one kind of feels like one of those, like, what's next or what is the second best kind of cases, which is we really only started talking about this once the actual Bitcoin ETF got approved. And we're like, oh, it's happening. All right. I guess we're on to the next one. Mrs. Producer, if you could please share the thing I'm trying to share. I would just like to point out, this is the schedule for Ethereum ETF approval. Notably, we did come up on our first SEC deadlines for the iShares and the Fidelity Trust on January 25th. A lot of the rumor speculation right now is going on around the Van Eck and the ARC21 shares approval dates of May 23rd and 24th. If we see something similar to what we saw with the Bitcoin approvals, is that they're kind of just going to approve them all at the same time, because the thing has been just like out and about, all around approved. So you're all good to go. However, the one thing I'm going to point out with this is that look at the custodian for the majority of these ETFs. It's Coinbase, and the other one is Gemini. Possibly. I'm going to have to look more into that one. However, the only different one is Fidelity. And then there is a show that talked about the SEC suing someone, and that someone was Coinbase, and those people were us. This was literally last week, I believe, which is that if the SEC is currently suing Coinbase, is that going to factor into whether or not they approve stuff that they are directly custodying? I will say one thing that Jay and Josh talked about previously is the XRP paper that came out from the SEC previously, which listed over 60 cryptocurrencies as securities. Notably, Ethereum was not one of them. This has been a question that's been lingering around for a long time, and even internal release documents from the SEC shows that, yes, this might have been thought of as a security at one point. However, we no longer believe that it is. So, with that being said, Coinbase is backing a lot of these. I think that might be one hurdle they're going to have to get over. January 17th, I have an article from Wall Street Journal saying that Coinbase is right now trying to get the judge to dismiss the SEC case. No movement on it just yet, so this lawsuit is still very active. That's my cold water take for what could theoretically hold this up. That's one of them. However, at the same time, your boy BlackRock is in here, so if you ask me, it kind of feels like they're rooting for BlackRock at this point.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Larry Fink getting denied, he will not be denied, man. He's the big
He will
boss.
not be denied twice.
Brendan, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah, it's something we've been talking about since early on. We had talked about the Bitcoin ETF being approved. It's part of, I think, one of our first, 4 or 5 shows when we talked about the perfect storm theory. And we had mentioned, as we lead up to sort of a huge potential increase in the overall crypto market and market cap, one of the first shoes to drop is the Bitcoin ETF. We then talked about that likely leading to an approval of the Ethereum ETF. And I think that we've been on this train from the beginning. We've been putting this out there so people can understand it. Look, I don't think Ethereum is going to flip Bitcoin this cycle personally. But think about how much Bitcoin ran leading up to the spot ETF. So if we think February, March, April, May, no rate cuts before then, right? Maybe until May. This gives Ethereum and the overall crypto market and potentially altcoins a huge opportunity to get green candles. And we could see green candles on monthly closes for multiple consecutive months to come. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think it's a distinct possibility. So I think this spot ETF, I think they're going to get approved at some point. I wish personally it was a little bit later than May, because I think that the later it gets approved, the better it is for the overall market, right? Because we can organically sort of rise, and then Ethereum spot ETF hits, and that takes us to that sort of next level of market cap. So I think the next few months are going to be really, really interesting from a market standpoint, especially leading up to that potential approval in May. Go back and watch our perfect storm theory, because everything is coming together literally as we talked about. Bitcoin spot ETF, Ethereum spot ETF, individual investors from China looking to get into Bitcoin because of their failing economy. Literally, we have predicted this. Okay, so go back and watch that episode, because all those pieces are starting to fall into place.
I'm going to tell you what one of my favorite memories is. All right, one of my favorite memories is meeting up with Brendan at the Seizures Sportsbook in Washington, D.C., right next to the Capital One Arena. It was the first time we had met. We were sitting down. I think he was drinking. He was either drinking red wine, yeah. And I had an IPA, and we just started sort of talking about like a perfect storm theory. Like, hey, bro, what do you think would happen if this happened? And then we also have to think about this. And the next thing you know, man, we were throwing it out in our group chat. And then from there, we just ran with it, dude. And that is one of my absolute favorite memories, man. It's absolutely awesome. Will, you've been kind of quiet on this topic. Did you have any comments or anything that you wanted to throw in?
I don't have a whole lot about the Ethereum ETF, like as far as thoughts and understandings on even how ETFs work or anything. It's just any sort of news that is generally bullish sounds appropriate for this roundabout time of the cycle where we're about to approach the Bitcoin halving, where all the other people that have been like applying for all these other Bitcoin ETFs, they're all getting approved. Everything's looking like it's going in order. So I'm just wondering, at what point, like, is the fire added to the engine? Is it going to be after it's like when it's too late or too early or something along those lines? And I just wonder like what effect it will have on the market. So I don't really know any of those things, but these are just kind of like my little mullings that I'm having over here.
And what's interesting about this cycle is we're getting news like that's coming up on CNN, on Fox Business, on all these financial shows prior to the halving, prior to the Bitcoin parabolic move, and prior to the bull run. All right, in cycles before, it took Bitcoin going parabolic and sort of breaking those price barriers for these major news networks to really start talking about this stuff. And now it's being talked about on C-SPAN. It's being talked about on Fox Business. It's being talked about on CNBC. It's all over crypto space. We got financial investors and hedge funds that are talking about it now, even prior to the halving. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Will it run a full cycle? Is this going to top faster to where it's more of a left translated cycle, and to see how all this stuff is going to play out?
And ads on Google. Don't forget ads on Google. You can now take out an ad for crypto, and it can show up on Google. And look, other big companies are going to follow place. So we're going to start seeing a lot more places, and that's just good for adoption. Sorry, Jay.
Yep. DRT ads coming soon.
I was just thinking about that, bro.
It seems like everybody's on board except Vanguard, man. Vanguard's down bad.
DRT ETFs.
Adapt or die.
I wonder. So they didn't want to get in with the Bitcoin. I'm assuming they're probably not going to get into the Ethereum ETF either. Like you have to be consistent with your message. You're like, okay, we're off. We're no crypto. But my God, they're man, that L. They're not going to hold that L well, bro.
Look, all I got to say is shout out to Axis for creating possibly one of the greatest appreciating assets in the last 2 decades. If you go look at that token, the chart is out of this world. Would love to look at some traditional finance people and be like, this guy launched a shitcoin and has done like a 20,000x. Like,
hey man, shout out to Cody over here. Cody from the chat, onboarding more people into Hex and Alta Pulse Chain, man. Hey, that's a fantastic use of your time, man. You could certainly be doing a lot worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Cody, your the message that you sent in Billy Mays style with all caps didn't show up on the YouTube side. We can see it back here in the production room. But for those of you who are wondering what Jay's talking about, Cody has onboarded some folks into Pulse Chain, PHEX, and EHEX. So absolutely, congratulations, Cody. And I think possibly typing in non-Billy Mays style with all capital letters for everything. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. I think that YouTube might censor Billy Mays talk for some reason. So anyways, that's for the audience and everything. That's all I had to say.
All right, boys. Any final thoughts on Ethereum before we go ahead and transition?
On to the next one.
I think we all like Ethereum. Absolutely.
I also like things that are forked.
Yes.
I was wondering when that comment was going to come.
What could that possibly be?
If Ethereum becomes a non-security, then anything in fork that's exactly like it should also be not a security, right?
Yep.
You would think. One would think. I love it. All right, let's do another round of community shout outs. Again, chat, you guys are on fire. Appreciate it. Keep the conversation rolling, whether you guys are talking about something on your own or whether you guys are contributing to the channel. the conversation here. We absolutely love it. You guys are on fire. All right, we got Crypto Bigfoot coming in with the this channel is going to 10x soon. I hope so, man. We are definitely going to keep it up, and we've already had some pretty good growth thus far. I'm surprised at how well we've been doing and the amount of people that we've been able to have on. So
I know it's a bit of a vanity metric, but our channel has literally 2x subscribers in 1 month. So that's wild. So massive thank you to everybody showing up. This is fantastic.
Big shout out to everybody. Ride. Absolutely. Big shout out to everybody. We hope to do, more X's for sure, viewership wise, and bringing people in. But, to all those that have been with us since day one, it's absolutely awesome. And for the new folks coming in, they're going to need to know what the DJing way is. So we got to, things that you guys learned here, keep it going. All right. We got Paul hitting us with the haircuts for everyone. 100%. Absolutely. Tam, she appreciates how smart each of us are. We are on fire together. I couldn't agree more. I absolutely.
Hey, but who's the smartest, Tam? Who's the smartest?
It's Will.
There we go. The ultimate question right there. And we got Cody again. ETFs aren't crypto. Very interesting. Not seeing a bigger pump after these ETF approvals. My theory is they already had their stacks. Now fuck with the markets.
Mm-hmm. Cody, you'd be interested in the following few articles, and there's a clip actually that kind of speaks to what you're talking about. So yeah, look forward to that, man.
All right, article number 3. It's going to be coming from Bitcoin Magazine. It's an op-ed written by an author, economist, and a Bitcoin specialist named Ansel Lindner. So this article was written in the first person. He says, last week I put a massive buying pressure. He said, I put the massive buying pressure coming to Bitcoin in context, but there is another, perhaps a larger, source of potential demand entering the scene. A somewhat unexpected development is emerging in China, of all places. They are experiencing an end of an economic model transition. The China we have grown to know was built on debt, producing goods for over-indebted foreign customers. They've become heavily dependent on globalization and a highly elastic monetary environment. That era is coming to an end, and a crash of the Chinese real estate market and now their stock market are visible signs of an end to the paradigm. Chinese investors are in full panic mode, and the authorities are barring the door. It is only a matter of time until more Chinese investors start tapping Bitcoin for its store of value and portability. Many Chinese are already familiar with Bitcoin. China used to be a dominant source of demand for Bitcoin until the CCP banned it in 2021. This morning, a piece from Reuters quoted a senior executive of a Hong Kong-based Bitcoin exchange who confirmed this capital flight story. Investment of the mainland is risky, uncertain, and disappointing. So people are looking to allocate assets offshores. Almost every day we see mainland investors coming into the market. And, you know, when I was reading this article, a thought came to mind. A lot of times when we think about China and how the context of the news is coming out, especially here in the United States, usually it's wrapped in some sort of context of a military conflict or an economic battle going on with China. That's normally what we see when we have news coming out. Rarely do we have information coming out about the Chinese economy standing alone. So if for those of you who aren't really paying attention, I'm just going to mention a couple things that are going on in China right now. And to put this article more into context. So the China youth unemployment right now is at 21.3%. That is where the unemployment for those that are beginning their adult career are in China right now, 21.3%. Exports in China have dropped 14% year over year over the last couple of years. Imports have dropped 12% year over year. The Chinese stock market is down 20% since January, and the real estate sector has fallen 15 to 25% respective areas. And then last but not least, we all have to look back and think about the COVID-19 pandemic and what's been happening in China ever since 2020. You guys think You know, if you guys are living in America and you think the political climate and the restrictions that we had in the United States during the COVID-19 pandemic were rough here, you have to understand what they went through in China's zero COVID policy. All right. They had tumultuous lockdowns. They had entire cities that were banned. They had, even if it was rumored that you were with somebody, people were locked away in their houses. And they took a very extreme approach to the lockdowns in China versus what we saw here in the United States. And a lot of people, me included, think that a lot of the lockdowns that we had here were overstepping. So China went through it tremendously, much more so than the United States and a lot of European countries. So with that information in mind, panel, whoever wants to speak up first, if you guys have any articles or any ideas, thoughts, comments on the article, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few. What I actually really zoned into during this article is something very interesting. So you mentioned that the Chinese economy is slowly but surely collapsing, right? Because they thrived on globalism, as the article stated, elastic monetary policy. I think everybody knows what every single country in the whole world is going through right now, right? Monetary tightening. And so what was really interesting during this article was they mentioned that so within the Chinese stock exchange, right, there are US-based ETFs. And because despite what you might think about the dollar, right, like the US dollar is still stronger. And so that was the Chinese investors' flight to quality, right? They were basically transitioning their capital from the Chinese markets to the US market. What did China do? We're going to be like, hey, man, we don't like that here. We're going to freeze your shit so that you can't, like they said it was, I think it was something along the lines of protecting investor capital. So they froze their assets so that they could stop the bleeding of all of these different Chinese funds, right? Because people were shifting their capital from Chinese to US markets, right? So that's number one. And I thought to myself, oh, that's very interesting. It's kind of very well in line to why we have transitioned into crypto, right? Because that is the complete, it's antithetical to the spirit of crypto, right? It's a centralized entity. They can freeze your assets at any time. You don't own your shit. And so why do we like crypto? Because they can't do that. They can't do that to us, right? Unless the federal government came to my house, pointed their gun to my head, say, give me your private keys, give me your seed phrases. They can't do anything to my assets, right? And so that's what I really zoned in during this article. I'm like, this what the Chinese government did to their people investing into their markets because they had a scare that all of this liquidity was going to move from the Chinese to the US based ETFs, and they froze everybody's accounts. That's precisely the reason why we are in crypto, right? Because they can't control crypto in that way. So that's what my thoughts about the article, because I was like, bro, like, can you imagine having, if you're not into crypto and you were all like, I'm all traditional finance, and then you saw what was going on behind the scenes and you're like, okay, man, I got to get my shit out of here, right? I got to transition into something that's a little bit more stable, maybe something that's going to appreciate. And then the Chinese government's like, no, sorry, sir. Sorry, can't do that. You don't actually own it. It's like living with an HOA, right? It's like you don't really own your property. It's kind of like that, but worse.
True. It's for people like myself who kind of look at this article and think it's a little bit nebulous. It's like, I don't really understand or like see the tangibility of like how China affects our markets, but I'm going to try to put things in a little bit of perspective. China on a whole operates on such a scale because their population is so massive, and they have the ability to mobilize said population in such massive ways that they can do things that affect the world at large. And I'm going to point this to a story that's a little bit of an engineering fun fact, but go look up the Three Gorges Dam. China built a dam that when it is full, it is so large and so massive, it literally slows down the rotation of the earth and extends the year by about like a few seconds. What this is, it's that trick where like, if you are on the merry-go-round, if you're on the inside, it doesn't feel like you're going very fast, but if you're on the outside, it feels like you're going very fast. Conservation of momentum. They piled up so much water on the edge of the earth above sea level that it slowed down the rotation of the earth. That is the magnitude of the effect that China as a whole can have on certain things. So when you look at markets per se, just imagine a force like that that has the ability to influence markets. It's very hard to think about how much would stuff cost if China did not manufacture all of our stuff. But your $1,000 iPhone, if you think that's expensive now, without China, that could easily be into the 5 figures. So just keep that in mind when you read articles about foreign countries and the influence that they play in the markets at large.
Yeah,
Your
and
point, Zenith? Go ahead, Ben.
I was gonna say we have to also say we can't forget Bitcoin's still banned. Crypto's still banned in mainland China, right? So we haven't mentioned that yet, and that's something that people still need to know. So while there's still a lot more interest of people getting into the crypto market in China, it doesn't mean that it's actually happening anywhere close to the level that it would be if Bitcoin was approved. So if China ever decides to unlock that box, ever starts to have its own maybe Bitcoin ETF or Ethereum ETF to allow its people to invest in crypto, woo-wee, that could be more floodgates opening, and that could mean that the cycle could get to a perfect storm theory, right? These are things that we've been mentioning here previously, but keep in mind, it's still illegal to buy Bitcoin in China. Now, there are some exchanges that people can still use. I think OKX, I believe, read in the article, or I've read in other articles. Can't remember if it was that
Binance and OKX. Yeah.
Binance and OKX, yeah. But keep that in mind. So there's still a huge opportunity for investors in China if their government ever takes the reins fully off.
Yep, agreed. I was going to just comment on something that Zenith, so he spoke about the potential influence of China. If you guys think back during the last cycle, what happened when China was like, sorry guys, we're not going to do Bitcoin anymore. It kind of put a cap on everybody's super cycle theory. So to his point, you can't ignore what China's doing, man.
Yeah, so what if it goes the other way, Jay, right? Like last cycle, they banned it, and it kind of capped where we would have been. I think we probably would have hit 100K Bitcoin had China not done that, right? So what happens this time if we have the exact opposite? China unbanning Bitcoin and Ethereum, say, I don't know, June, July, fall. Woo!
Yeah. Well, they want to save their markets. They're going to have to pivot into something, man.
They're at 100%. They're going to have to. I mean, they are tumbling right now, and like I said, most of the news coming out of China, especially here in the United States, is like military related or economic war related, like trade and stuff like that. But I mean, it took me I had to do 3 or 4 different article dives in this when I was preparing for this story, because I got to admit, man, I didn't really understand the perils that the Chinese economy is in right now. Like, it is in free fall. And if there's one thing that will spark a revolution, it is a financial crisis that is headed down the tubes fast.
Yeah.
And, look, say what you will, it's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is typically what happens in communist regimes and stuff like that. I'm not turning the show political or anything like that, but chickens are coming home to roost right now and people are feeling it. And especially when you got 70 to 80% of real estate owners, of people that own property in China, regular everyday people, they are upside down right now. They are superbly upside down.
Yeah.
And if you think back to what happened here in the United States in 2008, 2009, and you multiply that because of what's going on in China right now, I mean, look, they're going to have to find something. And in a lot of ways, Bitcoin could solve the problem. It's capable of solving the problem. Cryptocurrency in general. I'm not specifically saying it's Bitcoin. I know I just did, but I'm going to alter that statement to say cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency in general can be the answer to it. And it will unlock.
Cryptocurrency might solve this one problem, but China has other issues facing it on top of
100%.
One of which is the birth rate issue. Who knew that if you have a one-child policy for a couple decades, you're going to have a declining population rate, and then you're going to have an imbalance, which is going to cause other issues. It's probably not something you're going to see on the mainstream media a lot because they have a bit of a soft spot for China, but understand there's a lot more going on under the hood, and not much of it's very good at all.
Yeah, bro. Zenith beat me to it. Like,
sorry,
they have
stolen.
Their economic issues, they're at the very end of that. That's the last domino, right? They need to go upstream and address all of the stuff upstream, right? That first domino from collapsing, because like you said, well, Josh also mentioned it, right? 21% youth unemployment, right? They're declining population. So these people, their population is going to retire soon. Who's left to take up the reins? Who's going to innovate, right? Who's going to propagate the species into perpetuity, right? Their story is going to end soon if none of that happens. Okay, so they've got a few dominoes to stop from falling before they can address this economic issue. Guarantee you, man. They got a lot more problems than that. Sorry, well, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just gonna say, like, China's got they have a history of doing some really silly policies, like, hey, let's take all of our like plows and all of our farming implements and rework the iron into really crappy pig iron and make weapons out of it, and then like go try and fight wars, and then everyone gets demolished. Or hey, let's kill all of the crows so that way our crops grow better, and then like massive bug infestations happen, and it has like the opposite effect. Like their one child policy, their financial policy, their economic general policy, their real estate like policy, like they're building what are those cities over there, those ghost cities, right?
Yeah.
Those
building
where people invest in real estate, but no one moves in. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I hope that they can find a solution for it, because that's going to be a whole lot of unhappy people if no solution is come to.
Well, here's the thing. Well, the problem with that is they're not having kids. So what you have left is a population full of old heads that, to use the youngins term, the old heads. You have a bunch of old heads left who are so entrenched in how they do things. Nobody is there to tell them otherwise. Nobody is there to innovate. Nobody's there to say, we like these things that you brought from the past, but a few things need updating and tweaking, right? There's nobody there to do that, unfortunately. So it's like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, yes, they need to find solutions for these problems, but if nobody's willing to innovate, you can only do so much, right? You need problem solvers.
And China they know that they've made a mistake, and they know that they need people to have children. And so they're trying to run reverse propaganda to try to get people to have more children. But they've been putting this into their people's mind for their entire lives. And they're having a really hard time changing people's perception about having more than one kid.
Yeah. Because they made it illegal.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you willing to risk life and limb to break the Chinese law? Because they come down pretty hard on you, man.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Any final comments before we transition? Cool. Let's hit the chats one more time. We got Chad in the house. Based Bean, 100%. Tam is continuing her awesome cheerleading antics. We appreciate that very much. So she answered the question, which one of us is smartest, right there.
Political.
Sort of all of us in our own little special way. That's awesome. We got Niles in the house. Niles Jenkins, ladies and gentlemen. Great convo. Good to see you, Niles. Can't wait to see the info that you're putting out in the chats. And can't wait to have you back on stream, man. That's going to be awesome. We got Cody again. Agent J is on fire. I forgot my password, Mr. Federal Agent.
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
We got Colonel Giggles in the house. What's going on, man? Hope all is well with you. Funk Master Hex, good evening, my man. And Crypto Chronic, what is going on? We appreciate the compliment. We're just covering some good articles that we think you guys would like. So,
Josh, you don't want to cover the hashtag I'm trying to start. When you talked about that youth unemployment, I decided we needed a new movement. Hashtag save the sweatshops.
Save the sweatshop. Okay. I like it. If you got Twitter, start that hashtag. I'm all about it. All right. So we're going to sort of change it up a little bit here. We're going to hit the Fed article now. So we will save the reaction video for the last portion of the episode. So we are going to discuss the Federal Reserve right now. The next article comes out of Barron's.com. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell indicated that central bank officials still aren't convinced that inflation is on a sustainable path towards the 2% target. Powell said inflation has eased from its highs without a significant increase in unemployment. That's very good news, but inflation is still too high and ongoing progress and bringing it down is not assured, and the path forward is uncertain. The progress of taming inflation in the second half of last year was welcome, Powell added, but noted Fed officials will need to see continuing evidence to build confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably toward the 2% goal. The gain in its give me one quick second, real quick. All right, my fault. I had to make a little modification there. The gain in the core personal consumption expenditures price index, which excludes the more volatile cost of foods and services and energy, slowed to 2.9% year over year in December. Additionally, in the second quarter in a row, core PCE came in at 2% annualized rate during the fourth quarter. We have 6 months of good inflation data. The question really is that 6 months. The question really is that 6 months of good inflation data, is it sending us a true signal? Brendan, this is your area of expertise. What you got, buddy?
Couple things. First of all, I just want to point out that they have now changed how they calculate CPI in the data twice in the past 6 months, right? So we have to keep that in mind. We have to say, hey, what would inflation look like if we were calculating it like we did for many, many, many years, right? So you need to keep that in mind, and you need to do your own research, and you need to be well-versed in what's happening so that you can say, are these numbers good? Are these numbers true? Are these numbers accurate? Or are they feeding us a bunch of bull? I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying you really need to do your own research, and you have to make sure that you read all the little notes in those reports where you might miss out on something that's really important. A couple things as well. I think it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I talked about how the Fed Watch tool, the CME Fed Watch tool, how to keep an eye on that. And in March, they had like an overwhelming, like almost 90% chance for the Fed to start cutting rates in March. Well, fast forward to this past meeting, and what did Fed Powell say? Essentially, we're not cutting rates in March. He didn't fully take it out, but essentially, it sounds like we're not going to start seeing rate cuts until at least May. And the CME Fed Watch tool now is saying the same thing. So they're saying now it's an 85% chance that rates are going to stay steady in March, and now they're about a 60% chance that we'll see a rate cut in May. So if that's true, and if that holds, so say we don't get a rate cut in March, traditionally what happens when you get a rate cut is you'd think markets would go up, right? But it's actually a sell the news event. Markets always tumble after we start seeing rate cuts. So March would have been a rate, if we had got a rate cut in March, we could have expected a bit of a larger tumble than maybe what we're considering now, like what Jay was talking about. So what does this mean? This means that we have the ability, of course, markets will dictate what the markets do, but we have the ability to run green over the next several months, which if we were going to get a cut in March, we might have only been green in February potentially, and then we start maybe get a red month in March. And this is just leading to sort of the next few months, in my opinion. Overall, we'll have our dumps, but I think that we're going to see, and if we have a spot ETF of Ethereum looking likely in May, then yes, we could see some really, really nice runs on Ethereum and on altcoins in the market and as a whole, very much. So we could see a very good run over the next few months. And to me, that was the thing that this meeting really kind of put signals off in my head, because I was thinking March, we get a rate cut potentially. We start to see a little bit of a downward trend like we always do with rate cuts. But now, since we're pushing that rate cut out, we have an ability to run higher. What do you guys think about that in the short term?
Personally, so how you were mentioning earlier that it's a bit concerning if the ETFs were approved for Ethereum, if they were approved a bit too early, because that would make it more likely that the left translated 4-year cycle becomes the reality for us, right? Yep. But if the rate cuts are pushed until May of this year, right? And then we're also expecting the ETFs for Ethereum to be approved around May this year. This might turn into a sell the news event the same way that Bitcoin was a sell the news event when their ETFs got approved, right? And so it could kind of offset the parabolic move that the price would make otherwise. And so that could actually be, like a hedge for us when it comes to forestalling the highs in the crypto market, right? So that's what I think personally that could cause. And as far as what Chair Powell went over in the meeting, I know a lot of people don't like him. I actually, I actually am pretty fond of Jerome Powell. I mentioned this in the chat that he never over promises, right? He's very conservative in his language and his delivery. I like when he goes to the audience to ask questions, and they always try to put fucking words in his mouth, and he's always quick to backtrack. He's like, bro, that's not what I said. This is what I said. Right, because he doesn't want to manipulate the market in that regard. If he's going to give a too overly pessimistic or too overly optimistic view, right? That's why people don't really say, "Oh, JP's bullish or bearish." He's dovish or hawkish, right? They use like the more conservative terms for him because that's how he is as a communicator. And I think it was actually pretty positive because he said that, look, the inflation data that we're getting over the last few months, even though it's like only been like 6 months that we've seen a pretty good decline in the inflation numbers, this is what I really like kind of zone in. He was like, we don't necessarily need to get better numbers. We just need more of the numbers that we're getting now, right? So it's like he's not really looking for a steep decrease in these numbers. As long as we're getting a gradual, slow decrease in the numbers, then you could probably intuit, right, that the monetary tightening has stopped, right? And we're slowly but surely going to transition into the what's the opposite that I'm looking for? It's monetary tightening, monetary loosening, or monetary loosening cycles. I don't know if that's the correct term, but I think you guys know where I'm getting.
Yeah, it's quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is when they loosen the monetary policy, and then the tightening is when the opposite of that, pretty much.
Thank you, sir. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong here. But hey, listen, 2% inflation is achievable. All right. However, the Fed has pretty much already made the bed that they're in. They're not going to boost interest rates anymore. They're going to hold them. They're eventually probably going to start cutting them, but they're not going to raise them anymore. Okay. So 2% is definitely possible, but it's going to require an uptick in the unemployment. Now, the problem that we're in right now is it's 2024. We're in the swing of an election cycle. We're about to start getting geared up 100% into a general election cycle that happens in November. The last thing an incumbent president wants is for unemployment to tick up. So there are a couple things you have to be on the lookout for. If unemployment starts coming up, that 2% goal is achievable. And Brendan, I don't think that there's a way to obtain that 2% if we're not going to continue to raise rates without unemployment going up. It's just a simple matter of economics.
I mean, that's how it's always been in the past. I mean, past doesn't necessarily mean that the future will always be the same, but until that pattern is broken, right? And we talk about this with Bitcoin, we talk about this in the markets, until a pattern is broken, it's really hard to see it happening, right? So yeah, I mean, we've always needed unemployment to go up for us to reduce interest rates. And so are they cooking the unemployment numbers? I don't know.
Well, that's right. Another thing to look out for is especially pay attention to what's coming out, not only out of the Fed, but how it's being perceived in the media as well, because they could very easily start changing their predictions. They could start changing their targets. They could go from saying, hey, look, 2% is the goal to, hey, look, it's always been in the twos. Somewhere in the twos is fine, 2.8, 2.9. It's always been somewhere around there. And then, look out for that. Hey, okay, look, we've gotten to the point to where 3% is probably a much more realistic goal. Watch out for something like that, or watch out for those unemployment numbers, because if those unemployment numbers aren't really going to change, then 3% is probably going to be sticking around for at least the short term until the election cycle's over with.
Josh, you have a very good point. Okay, I'll take this real quick. Josh, you have a very good point there. We're talking about that unemployment rate is this untalked about third number in the triangle. A lot of people think that with the Fed raising interest rates, it's interest rates and inflation. It's directly tied. But there's that hidden third leg where you actually have the unemployment rate. Because the unemployment rate is an overall metric of activity in the workforce, and it's a pretty good indicator of GDP. And what inflation really is it's just more dollars competing for either the same amount of goods or just a little bit more amount of goods. So unfortunately, it sounds terrible to say, but yeah, if you want to curb inflation, that unemployment is going to have to go up a little bit unless you find a new way of solving it.
Yep. Agreed, man. It's like you said the quiet part out loud.
I'm not afraid to. It's not my job.
That's why whenever Chair Powell goes up there, hey, we're looking for a softening. Right? Softening of the softening of the employment markets, right? He's never gonna outwardly say, I want you guys to lose your jobs.
No, he's not. I will say this. I'm right there with you. I think Jerome Powell, for being the unfortunate talking head of a federal entity, he does a pretty good job at his job. And he keeps the reporters on track when they start asking him about how the Barbie movie and the Taylor Swift Eras tour affects the economy. This is a real thing that happened in the presser. I think it was August or September of last year. You can go watch it. But yeah, as far as it goes, Jerome Powell's not too bad. And the AI dubs that we get out of all his FOMC meetings are pretty great too.
Will, what you got, buddy?
I was going to ask, unemployment isn't a first order effect of the rate change. It's like second, third, or fourth order, something like that, right? It's not like an immediate thing that happens as a result of them making this decision. So I don't know. I guess my question is it correlation? Is it causation? Is it immediate causation? Is it long-term causation?
Unemployment's definitely more of a second order effect, I'd call it, because the way that I think about it is this, which is that the Fed controls interest rates. Interest rates determine the price of money, or the price of borrowing money per se. What do businesses do a lot? They borrow money to get that initial launch so that they have the capital to launch the business, and then they make it back over time as they get in the black. So theoretically, raising the interest rates makes it a little bit harder to do business. It means that you have to run a little bit leaner and a little bit cleaner. What that means is that, unfortunately, some people just might not cut it, or there might not be the ability to run their business in the area that they're doing. It could be many factors, but the end result of that is either the business cutting back, the business shutting down. And what happens when you have that is that you have people unemployed because they just lost their job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's causative to a significant degree. Yeah.
And this is how money is created. For those of you at home, for the folks at home who don't know, money isn't printed by some random set of printers somewhere. Money is printed when the Fed says, hey, you now have this money and you're going to pay it back to me over this, that, and the other amount of time. So they give you the money up front with the expectation that your business the same thing for mortgages with houses. When a person applies for a loan at a bank, that money is just created out of thin air. And then the bank borrows it from the Federal Reserve, and then you borrow it from the bank. Same thing with businesses. Am I correct in this?
You're partly correct. There's another half of that, which is fractional reserve banking, baby, which is the banks use your money to make new money for other people. Theoretically, the reserve ratio is 1/10. However, there's been some studies to show that they never really even touch that money that's technically yours, and they lend out other stuff that they're kind of just creating. Again, that also ties back into the Federal Reserve, because those banks lend to each other at the federal funds rate, or as close as they can to it, which is set by the Federal Reserve. So we're talking about how interest rates set by the Fed are about 5.5% at the most. Good luck trying to get a home loan at 5.5%. You are not one of those super uber trusted lenders, so you're not going to get that rate, and you got to pay a higher fee.
All right, so I've got some information on the on fractional reserve, and this is updated as of March 15th of 2020. The board reserve, and so this is the federalreserve.gov that I found this /monetary policy /reserve requirement. And this was just a quick Google search. In March 15, 2020, the board reduced reserve requirements ratios to 0% effective March 26, 2020. So they don't even have to have any money in the bank to lend it out. There is no fractional reserve anymore. That doesn't exist.
That's correct. Yep, we talked about that on F and Hangout on Friday. But yeah, going into the COVID period, there's absolutely no fractional reserve anymore.
Yep.
It was
There was a
0%.
clip,
And that,
go for it. Sorry.
now, I was going to say, now that is a policy that can be re-implemented, but as far as I know, it hasn't been re-implemented yet. And what happens most times when it comes to government, they put something in temporarily, and then a lot of times it sticks around. So this very well could be something that sticks around. So we'll ultimately have to see what happens. But yeah, right now there is absolutely no fractional reserve at all.
Yep. Why
There's
do you
a
guys
clip going around about? Sorry, Jay, I keep interrupting. Go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, why do you guys think? And this is a question to the audience, right? Look back at 2023. What was one of the big shitstorms in 2023 near the beginning? A lot of bank runs, right? Why do you guys think it's so easy to have those bank runs? So just to kind of some thought experiment there.
And if you look at it, it wasn't the large banks; it was the small, mid-sized banks. That's where the ones that were taking the hit. All right, so in a lot of ways, it's consolidating the financial sector into a small cluster of large banks, and that's been, it's been trending that way pretty much since the great financial crisis happened in 2008. It's been a consolidation of money into the large banks, those that are too big to fail. Because you didn't see anything like that in 2008. You certainly didn't see anything like that throughout the second half of Obama's presidency into the Trump presidency. And then when COVID came around, the only real bank failures that we saw were the small to mid-sized banks. We didn't see any large bank collapses coming through. And Will, did you have something else there? I saw that you were starting to come off mute.
No. That was all that I had. I was just wanted to clarify, but you guys already answered.
I would say Wells Fargo was in trouble there for a little bit, or at least that's what it seemed like, right? There's a couple of news articles out there saying that Wells Fargo could have potentially been in trouble. So,
all right, looks like we lost Bean. He was traveling a lot this weekend, so he had to punch out real quick. So, but he didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Make sure you guys are following Brendan. All of his information is down in the description below. So Brendan, if you're catching the end here, we appreciate the information, and we'll be live with you in the chat and all that stuff. So, but all right, guys, any final thoughts before we transition here?
No, sir.
All right, let's hit the chats one more time. We only got 2 feature comments, so we're going to be shouting out first. Moonpilled Rational Optics. So glad he caught the live stream tonight. Shout out, man. I'm glad we were able to get the situation rectified and get you back on again. We apologize for the accidental ban during Jay's TA stream there. So,
our boy's been working hard, putting in overtime. He shows up to catch a stream, and the first thing we do is kick him out.
Right, right,
bro.
All right.
Was Moonpill talking shit about my TA? Is that why you banned him, bro?
I think it was Bean. I think maybe Bean picked up on something about how your TA was sort of subpar lately. So
I got you. It's okay. I'll complain to HR about Bean, man.
Got you.
Okay, I'm a protected class, damn it.
I like it. All right, and then we got Russ. The Fed is contributing to the general misunderstanding of inflation by obscuring that they have the money printer. Definitely.
Money printer go burr.
All right, last topic of the night. We're gonna do a reaction video. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here, Cassie. I'm gonna get you to set it up here, but let me go ahead and intro the vid real quick. So this is the CEO of Beam, which correct me if I'm wrong. It's a global digital wallet. That's pretty much what Beam is, correct? It's a global digital wallet. Did you guys do any research on that?
A little bit. It's a global digital money transferring network that is backed by cryptocurrency. Basically, Their goal is to try to allow anyone in the world transact, and they just use cryptocurrency on the back end to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So think the cryptocurrency, or one of the solutions for a very how people used to do money transmitting in the past, which is like Western Union, kind of something along those lines, right? That's the niche they're trying to fill.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So this is the CEO of that company giving a little information on self-custody. And I will go ahead and start the video and we will react to it.
I mean, I think unequivocally, the Bitcoin ETFs, the spot ETFs, are good for crypto. It is good to be able to expose more people to technology, good to expose more people to the markets, good to bring it to a wider audience. So I think that's all good. But I just think it's really important at the same time for us to think about the possible negative implications. It's easy to get caught up in all of the excitement, which is warranted at some level, but there are negative implications. And for me, I think the biggest negative implication is that the core promise for me of crypto, of Bitcoin, is this idea of self-custodial products where you have ownership of your own money. That is the whole dream of the technology, is people being in control of their own money. And these ETFs, while they are great, they are the creation of a financial instrument where someone else owns your money and you have access to it in the form of, this publicly traded share on this stock exchange. And that's all well and good, but it does get away from those original ideals, which I think is really important to remember. My hope is that the industry can use the Bitcoin ETFs as sort of a top of funnel, that people can become interested in technology, hear about it, get access to it for the first time, maybe through these Bitcoin ETFs, if that's the easiest way for them to get access to it, but then go down the rabbit hole and learn about what the technology is actually about and begin to own it themselves and really use it themselves in a truer way to the core ethos of the technology.
He really does bring up an important point here about, sort of self-custody here. And it's good to give a taste of cryptocurrency ownership through more centralized means, I guess you could say. But as long as we come in and we preach and we understand and we sort of lead and guide people on the importance of self-custody, I think that is extremely paramount. And I agree with a lot that he is saying in this video. Jay, what do you think?
So this video, well, when we were talking in the green room earlier, I mentioned that a lot of the articles that we covered today, they have a thematic element to them, right? The stuff that this gentleman was talking about in the video, we spoke about it during the China article too, right? And that the ETFs, although good for the overall market, is antithetical to the spirit of crypto, right? Because what you're doing when you're investing in an ETF, right? It's these centralized entities that are basically holding the crypto for you, right? Not your keys, not your coins, right? Your crypto, like what they're giving you is a paper receipt. They actually hold the keys to all of that crypto, right? Same, like he's making the same exact point here, right? Although good for the market, yes, it's going to bring a mass exodus of traditional financial people into our markets. So number go up. You can't forget what crypto is supposed to be for everybody, right? Is to move away from the centralized nature of money, right? So that we don't end up in a situation like we have with the US dollar, where the federal government has carte blanche to print as much fucking money as they want, right? And they're not gonna bring anybody, or at least they're not gonna tolerate anybody in that presidential seat who's gonna say stop printing money, right? And so it's like he's giving everybody a reminder to look, yes, these are good for the price performance, but don't lose track of the goal, right? And that is self-custody, because you don't want to end up in the same situation that you were in beforehand, right? So that's really all that he was saying in that clip, right? It's like, keep the spirit of crypto in your mind when you're considering all of these big entities coming in, accumulating a large market share of Bitcoin, right? Because what do we know over the past month? How much do the 9 ETF people, asset managers have now in Bitcoin? They have over 125,000 Bitcoin, right? That's a lot of Bitcoin, man.
Yeah, it's important. It's important you say that, Jay, because if self-custody fails to become a sticking point, then cryptocurrency is going to fail to remain decentralized. And that's just the case. If we were to look 20 to 50 years into the future, and if we're in a situation where self-custody has just, flown by the wayside or whatever, and it's no longer a big sticking point, then it's going to look exactly like the stock market is. A majority of investors increasing the wealth divide, while the dwindling amounts of educated solo investors become smaller and smaller. All right. There are still always going to be individual investors that have put in the time and the effort that are going to be successful in their endeavors in the stock market. But for the most part, it's more so the large institutional money that's able to make those sort of funds. And if decentralization is lost in this industry, then we could be looking at something very similar to the stock market 20 to 50 years from now. So, but yeah, I agree completely with what you said there. It's a good talking point.
Yeah, man. It's
So-
like, go ahead.
Go
Zenith.
for it. Okay, I was gonna
Well,
say
I was just- I was
this remind Jay,
Go to
go.
mute.
Wait. No, I'm just
Oh my god.
Zenith, go ahead. Zenith,
He's got so much
go
to
ahead.
say. All right, so this reminds me of a conversation that I've had multiple times with my best friend and roommate. He is also an investor himself. However, he's not very into the crypto space. He's done a little bit of like the Robinhood cryptocurrency investment, but he made a good point to me the other day when I was trying to talk to him about like cryptocurrency as a whole. If you have your own keys, you can do so much with it. You can transfer it anywhere. You have the ability to custody your own wallet. You can get airdrops. You can stake it. You can do all these things. And he goes, yes, but I'm not interested in owning cryptocurrency. I'm interested in investing in the price of Bitcoin. And that was one of those things for me. I was like, okay. This person may not or may never be fully converted to the whole decentralization way of thinking. However, at the same time, this is a serious investor who wants some exposure to this asset at least. And it's like, okay, at the very least, is there a way to involve this person in our ecosystem? And something like Robinhood or an ETF is the way to capture those folks. It is unfortunately that layer of re-centralization, as we'll call it in this case, which is that you're handing over control and custody to someone who is not you, who you don't in particularly know. Am I frozen again?
No, you're good.
We're back. And
you're good.
Again, it is like what you're saying, Josh. It's one of those central themes that we've been talking about this whole episode, which is that you can have a decentralized product, but if you take steps to sort of bastardize the founding principles and the priorities of what you're trying to do in the first place, it is possible to undo all the great things that you set up in the first case. So I got
No, 100% agreed, right? And to your friend's point, it's a fair argument. He's interested in investing in the price of Bitcoin. I think that's all fine and well, as long as he's aware of the potential consequences, right? Like he's certainly he's welcome to invest his money into the ETFs, right? But I think the reason why we speak about the importance of decentralization, right, into custodying your own assets is because of the fact, is because of the nature of these centralized entities to freeze your shit when shit hits the fan, right? And as long as he's comfortable with that, with those consequences, then that's totally fine, right? But he can't come crying to you like, oh, Zenith, like BlackRock rugged me. I had 5% of my net worth in that, and now I can't get it out. Or the only thing you can tell him, like, hey man, it's like you should have been you should have been aware of the consequences. That's what we spoke about. That's the risk that you took when you invested in a centralized entity. Like, can't really help you there. So, right, for every give me, there's a gotcha, right? There's just not 100% upside to everything. So
that's true. I will say this much though. I've explained the risk to my friend, and he still understands. Like, yep, this is the name of the game. We're not going to put anything in. We're not willing to lose. However, at the same time, I will admit that he is a bit unconventional because he is the Giga Chad of investors that I wish I could be. Because we were both in the Coast Guard at one point. He decided, you know what? I don't need a place to live. I'm just going to live on the ship, get a storage unit, and then bank all of this Boston BAH pay. And then when COVID hit, he looked at what stocks got hit the most. He's like, cruise ships. Time to put the life savings into cruise ship stocks. And my God, he's an absolute mad lad, but also he struck it big on that one. So hats off, good sir. Well done.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like people who know that seatbelts exist in cars and opt not to wear them, not necessarily for like the legality's sake, but it's just like, this isn't something that I'm interested in. I want to be able to get into and out of my seat quickly. I don't want to have the discomfort like on my shoulder or whatever. It's like, I know that there's risks that come with this, and I'm good with it. And like my priorities of comfort and preference or whatever outweigh the like what I consider the likelihood of getting into like a serious car accident. Sure, it happens, and it could be devastating if it does, but like it's all part of like what you had mentioned earlier, the Securing Wallets book by Stephen Bates, who we interviewed, and like part of the thing that he talks about in that book is you need to analyze like what's your particular like risk profile. What are the certain things that you're willing to, what are the risks that you're willing to undertake in order to get yes, in order to undertake the or in order to get the results that you desire for whatever reason. So shout out to him, fucking mad lad, buying cruise ships and stuff. Sounds like a proper degen.
He's a proper degen.
And see, Zenith, he's fortunate that he has you by his side, right? Because I've always been a proponent of this idea, right? It's that the hardest lessons in life that you're going to learn are almost always going to leave a scar, and people need to learn those lessons by themselves, right? Because you could be there given the best advice possible, but unless they crash and burn by themselves, they might not be ever receptive to the type of information that you give them, no matter how good that information is, right? So it's like as a good friend and confidant, like the only thing that you could do is stay there, keep him at arm's reach. Once he's ready to accept the help, hopefully something like what happened with, because the comment here, right, seems like he's ready to invest into, what was that, the Celsius FTX by Paul Sachs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says your friend sounds like he's ready to jump into the FTX Celsius creditors line. He might need to, right? He might need to experience that kind of pain. And then he's like, whoa, man, Zenith told me this could happen. And this one kind of, it stung a lot. So maybe now I'm going to be a little bit more receptive to what he's going to tell me instead of having my ears closed, right? So.
Or perhaps just fortunate and never has to worry about it. It's all a big gamble.
Or that.
And that's kind of what I think a lot of us are doing, which is we're trying to go very hard into something we're researching a lot and trying to learn as much as we can. Diversification be damned. We know what we're doing, so we're going to do it hard.
Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, we got a $10 Canadian super chat here from Brother64. Shout out. I think he had to take off. But great show tonight. We appreciate it. Sam, if you're still here with us, man, we appreciate it so much. Can't wait to have you on the 21st. But big shout out to Brother64. All right, guys, that pretty much does it for the show. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Will, where can they find you? What are you working on? What are you excited about? Give the folks what they want here.
The folks can expect to see me moseying about Texas for the next for the near future. What I am doing next week is obviously I'm going to be on the DGen Roundtable streams, as many of them as I can swing. We got book club coming up next week, right, Zenith? Yes. So
this
we got
week, brother. This
club.
Friday.
Or yeah, this coming Friday. So in less than 7 days, we're going to be covering the Wolf of, or not the Wolf of Wall Street, the Way of the Wolf.
The Way of the Wolf. This
Jordan
absolute highlighter of a book that will accost your eyeballs if you look at it from the wrong angle.
Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna be doing that, so you guys can catch me on there. You'll catch me on the Whiskey Wednesdays and whatever streams, and I'm gonna try and hop on that Telegram stream as well. As far as IRL events, this weekend I am going down to San Marcos to be interviewed by the Proper Thieves podcast. They're some friends of mine, and they've asked me to come down and speak with them. It is a pre-recorded interview, so it will not be live. Their podcast has not launched yet. They're getting like a handful of interviews all ready to rock and roll. So when they finally put it up on YouTube, I will make sure to share it with you guys and get the links out and everything. But I'll be going down to San Marcos, which is just south of Austin or somewhere around Austin. So if any of you Hexkins are in the Austin area, in Austin, Texas, I'm going to be posting up in the Hex Meetup chat, which you can find right here at t.me/hex_meetup. And I'll be talking about some places that I'll be and some things that I'll be doing over there if I have some free time and whatnot. So look forward to seeing you all over there, all my Hexicans and Texicans and all you folks and things like that. Other than that, you guys can find me at linktree/Will Stevenson, and all my socials are in the description below. Jay, what's going on with you, bro?
Folks, as always, thank you so much for joining us here on this wonderful Sunday evening. We know time is your most valuable asset, so we appreciate that you spend some time here with us because you could be anywhere else, but you're here trying to get this alpha, trying to make it out of the rat race and make some money during this bull market. So once again, thank you for joining us. As far as what you can expect over the next week, we got quite a few shows for you. Like I said, we're going to be going over the Illuvium State of the Union address with Kieran Warwick. On Tuesday, we have the Whiskey Wednesday stream. We might have something this Thursday, who knows? And then we have book club with Zenith on Friday, and then of course our Sunday show. As always, you can find me at _P90 Hex on X and at agent_J Schroth on Instagram. And please pray for my camel. Okay, Camel Newton is out there suffering. All right, pray for my camel. Call PETA.
Call Fast Abdul. He'll get you a new camel, and I heard he'll give you a good deal on it if you bribe him properly. Anyways, I am Zenith. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at Hexco Space Force or Hex Space Force on Twitter. Like Will talked about previously, we are doing Way of the Wolf this Friday for book club. It is a sales book. However, it's really more of a persuasion book. And there's even a chapter in here talking about voice tonality and how it can affect people's psychological stuff when you're trying to talk to them or negotiate things, so to speak. Unfortunately, this is back when he got sober after all the fun stuff, so no lewds, no crashing the cruise boat in this one, but still a good read. This book is 8 hours single speed on Audible, so if you're looking for an excuse to ignore your coworkers for a full day with your earbuds in, that's a good one. Also, I'm just going to throw it out now because we're probably going to cover it at some point in the future. $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy is a book on our short list, and on Audible, it's only 3 hours long, so get after that one while you're there. That is what I got going on right now. Josh, go ahead and take us out of here.
Yeah, hey, panel, awesome conversation tonight, guys. This was absolutely phenomenal. The insights were spot on, and I can't thank you guys enough. You guys made this show awesome. Chat, you guys, I mean, I say it every week, but I mean, this week especially, you guys were absolutely on fire. Different conversations going on. You guys were contributing to the channel too, contributing to the conversation, all that good stuff. We thank you guys so much. As Jay always says, and I'm just going to echo it, we know time is your most valuable asset. So we thank you guys for spending a little bit here with us, devoting the time that you have on your Sunday evening to hanging out with us for a couple hours and to listen to the conversations that we're coming up with. So we thank you guys so much. Again, if you guys haven't done so already, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you've been around the channel and you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you guys post a solid comment on there. We love the comments. And join the Telegram. Join the Telegram. It's free for now. It's not going to be free forever. Join that Telegram. We got content going on all hours of the day. We got special community calls hosted by Dace every Tuesday. So that's an awesome opportunity. That's something that's not here on YouTube. And it's just a good time. It's real refreshing and to see the knowledge and the information of the people that are in that chat. And it's ever growing. So make sure you guys hop in there. So my name is Josh. You guys know me. If you've been around the channel, you guys can find me on Twitter, on Instagram at Chocolate Taints. Looking forward to the show that we have coming up on Tuesday. Looking forward to Whiskey Wednesday. That's going to be an absolute blast. From 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, we're going to be having the hangout section. So if you guys want to hop on Wednesday night and hang out for 10 or 15 minutes with us, make sure you're in the community chat and make sure you send a message to Miss McGinnett in there, and she will get you on the schedule. So, and again, shout out to Cassie too. Behind the scenes, Cassie, you did a phenomenal job tonight. You crush it each and every week, so we appreciate it so much. Looking forward to book club. It's going to be awesome. And then Super Bowl Sunday, we will have an episode. We'll probably figure out who all is going to be participating in that. Some folks might not be available. Other folks might be available. So either way, tune in and you guys will find out. So thank you guys so much. Looking forward to the next stream. Looking forward to all the good conversations that we have. And you guys are absolutely awesome. So with that being said, make sure everybody DJs responsibly.
In fact, we about to go up like.